Technology companies continue to let go employees, but new AI tracking systems are making it harder for those workers to find new jobs. Also, is Apple partnering with Google on generative AI a good idea or a bad idea? We'll talk about these stories and more on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. The guy behind the monitors behind me is Chris. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. And joining us this week as guest co-host is Brandon Maney. He is the owner of the Mangrove Collection, LLC in San Francisco, which offers fractional CTO and technical consulting services to SaaS businesses from pre-seed through IPO. He is also the CTO at Glasshouse, which provides transparency to the home services industry. In addition, Brandon has been a Silicon Valley technologist for more than 20 years, leading engineering, DevOps, data engineering, and product groups. You even did a stint at IDG several years ago. So welcome to the show, Brandon. We're going to put you under the spotlight.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
No, I'm happy that you're joining the show because you're giving us this Silicon Valley perspective that we often don't get. We're on the East Coast. You're over in California. So it'll be nice to get that perspective as well as your general knowledge on all things technology. So let's jump right into it. An interesting story we've been tracking has been all of the tech layoffs at tech companies throughout the year. So this week on CNBC, there was a story that said, since the beginning of the year, more than 50,000 workers have been laid off from over 200 tech companies. According to the tracking website layoffs.fyi, it is a continuation of the predominant theme of 2023, when more than 260,000 workers across nearly 1,200 tech companies lost their jobs. So companies like Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft have all taken part in downsizing this year, along with eBay, Unity Software, SAP, and Cisco. The sad part is that Wall Street has largely cheered on this cost cutting because obviously when you cut jobs, that makes the company quote unquote more efficient, and the tech stocks are now at record highs. But for a lot of those people that get let go, it can be difficult. When we talked about this a year ago, we had some other people on the show, Brandon, and they were bringing up the fact that, well, it's not a big deal if you're a tech guy and you get laid off because there's all these other jobs out there. You don't have to work for Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, or Microsoft. You can go find jobs in other parts of the country or other companies that might not be tech companies, but they need tech people. But now this year, I'm having my doubts about how easy it is to find jobs, and we hear anecdotes of lots of people that are struggling to find jobs. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, what does the situation look like in Silicon Valley? Is there optimism, or are people, frustrated with trying to find jobs after these layoffs?
I think that when I look at the job market today, I've been through a couple of up and downs. At first, I thought this was going to be similar to 2008, that we were going to see, recession coming in and some tightening of the belt. But, in the terms of Game of Thrones, like winter is here, winter is coming, and it's much more similar to 2000 and the dot-com burst that we saw, where not only are large companies taking in downsizing, you're also seeing a time where SaaS and the software that engineers are using are driving productivity at a rate that we've never seen before, where you need fewer people to do a lot of that work. There was an overhiring that happened during COVID that we're still recovering from. And I think the unspoken piece is still what happened with Silicon Valley Bank that we saw almost a year ago.
Right.
It is now these zombie startups that would have provided a safety net for somebody that's been at Alphabet who wanted to go to a Series B, a Series C. Nobody can raise funding. The interest rates are too high. And it's providing a really challenging market where either you are cut unwillingly from, a layoff of your job, or you've sort of quit and stayed, where you're just trying to wait for the economy to recover, and you're marshaling along with a lot of your tech teams being asked to do more with less, or like you're just waiting and trying to figure out how to start your own new opportunity. And I think where I started with Mangrove Collective and when I got into some of the consulting, we are seeing a redistribution of tech talent right now, the likes of which we haven't seen since 2000.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing new companies that are going to start in seed right now, either with AI or other pieces that are going to grow and be ready, the next PayPals, the next Amazons. It's going to take some time, but this is allowing for that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's pretty barren at the moment.
Are you seeing a lot of startups that just aren't getting funding at all because of what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, and there hasn't been anybody that's taken over that whole idea of we'll fund the startups?
I think that the bar is so high that it used to be sort of a CTO and a sales leader with an idea could go out and raise $5 million just on that. Now you need to not only be able to show that you have working software, it's no longer just prototypes. You need to show that you have some form of product market fit and that you're able to grow your NRR and GRR. You have happy customers and that these investors are looking for a well organized and operating business that can operate at a profit where it's no longer growth at all costs. And that's changed the dynamic really, really rapidly.
From my East Coast sensibility, though, that sounds like common sense, or that sounds like a return to normalcy rather than, and again, I know that this, like the thing that we're seeing now is nothing like the .com boom in the 2000s when, a company like Pets.com, for example, could get, $8 billion or however money, and then, all those companies were throwing rooftop parties. Right? And again, you were around for the 2008, 2009 slump, right? So, that was probably not as big a bubble either, but, I know that Silicon Valley goes through these waves, but you're saying that have you seen anything like this before, or is this just another cycle?
I think it's just another cycle. And what I will say is I'm getting some hints of spring, sort of to follow through with the metaphor.
Sure.
I think that investors are starting, as the interest rates fall, a lot of those zombie companies have either, shuttered, they've been purchased, there've been a lot of fire sales, and that with AI, sort of if that's the next major piece after in the early teens, we had the move to the cloud and all those efficiencies. Now AI is a place where we're going to see a lot of job creation. We're going to see a lot of innovation happening. I think it's also going to happen on the green tech side. That's bouncing back a lot faster than climate tech than a lot of the other industries. So I'm hoping and starting, my inbox is filling up with a lot more offers and asking for meetings.
Right. Well, that's good.
It's starting.
Yeah. I think the danger of all of the stories about AI and the money means that a lot of startups will just say, well, we've got AI technology, and whether or not they actually do, I'm pretty skeptical whenever someone says, oh, well, we've got AI features, and then you dig into it and there's not, it used to be just called programming. It used to be just called software.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful on that, right? You have to make sure that there is an AI component if you're investing in that type of thing. So go ahead.
It's such a new industry too, right? We hear prompt engineering, we hear about sidekicks. Like it's gonna figure itself out about what the hot terms are and where we can invest, and even what skills are needed. I think that there is some retraining that can happen, but we're seeing the efficiencies on the engineering side, and I think that if we can move folks from the coast, which are already happening, to different parts of the country that have lower living costs, they can still bring all of that experience and go and help somebody like a Macy's, take a risk on a small startup that may grow up like a glass house to something larger. Like these are times that you can make risks and have some really huge payoffs.
You had mentioned to me before the show that you have some friends that have been laid off in this space. And that they've been frustrated with trying to get jobs, because I want to bring up that component of it, because it appears like tools that companies are using, those AI tracking tools to weed through resumes, are potentially causing more problems for people trying to get jobs than they're meant to be, than they're designed. We've got people on our site that comment all the time about how frustrating it is to get a job. I know a lot of other people that are looking to get jobs, and just going through that process in 2024 is just a nightmare for a lot of them.
Well, here's a different side of the same coin, that as companies are reducing their staff, they get rid of the recruiters, they get rid of the HR folks, and those are the ones who not only write the job descriptions, but go through a lot of those evaluations. And with some of the platforms and the efficiencies for HR, Rippling or whatnot, you're able to auto-generate with AI what the job description is, and then hiring managers don't necessarily know what's in the market, so they may over-index or under-index on things that the AI has generated, and then the AI is going to evaluate based on that. So at least from my perspective and what I've heard, I had a IT professional, director of IT, who had been in, at that level for a decade, had been laid off and was getting rejected from jobs that fully qualified for, but they didn't have like restaurant back office experience to go and run IT for a restaurant. And there's no reason that you would need that.
Right.
But continued to get qualification roadblocks that weren't really indicative of their experience because the hiring managers were just offloading it to AI because they were being asked to do more and they wanted to filter into candidates that just might not exist.
Yeah. Chris, did you have some experiences in that? You've got some colleagues that were looking for jobs?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, I know there's a thing called the ATS, the application tracking system.
Yep.
It's basically how, everybody's resume gets funneled through, and it's basically like a SEO engine. It's just looking for all the keywords and stuff like that. And, you want to make sure your resume is SEO optimized and stuff like that. And it's, I don't know, it kind of takes the originality out of the application process if you think about it.
Right. It feels like it's adding another hurdle than they actually need. And that brings up our other story that I want to pop up, the BBC one. This one came out last month, but it's certainly relevant to the discussion here. AI hiring tools may be filtering out the best job applicants. This is from the BBC. Basically, as firms increasingly rely on AI-driven hiring platforms, many highly qualified candidates are finding themselves on the cutting room floor. A late 2023 IBM survey of more than 8,500 global IT professionals showed 42% of companies are now using AI screening to improve recruiting and human resources. Another 40% of the respondents were considering integrating the technology. Now, as you go through the story, it brings up this, now how some of the biases in these AI systems are basically cutting people out of the process. So there was one case where one user who had been screened out submitted the same application but tweaked their birth date to make themselves younger. With this change, they landed an interview. At another company, an AI resume screener had been trained on resumes of employees already at the firm, giving people extra marks if they listed baseball or basketball as hobbies that were linked to more successful staff, and they were often men. Those who mentioned softball, which is typically a female-driven thing, were downgraded. I mean, this is incredible, some of the stuff that is in this story. Basically, again, you have to learn how to beat the algorithm.
Game the system.
Yeah.
You really have to learn how to just game the system.
Yeah, and then even then there are problems. Like even if you get to that point of the interview, there are a lot of companies that are just fake posting. They're posting a job that they don't have any intention of filling because they either have EEOC requirements that they have to advertise for all of the of those regulations, or they do, but they know that they're going to hire the guy down the hall or a friend of theirs, and getting a job through the traditional system of sending a resume out, I think that's broken. I think the best way to try to get a job is through your network of actual people that you know. Well, yeah, if Brandon tells me, oh, hey Keith, there's a guy looking for a podcast host over here, and maybe you should send them a resume if you're looking, that kind of thing. Or if anybody needs a CTO, I'll go recommend Brandon here.
I totally agree. Back when I was at Parsable, we had a big podcasting wing that was doing a manufacturing podcast. And, I put them in contact with Jason Snell because I remember the Clockwise, podcast back from IDG. So those connections are so key. And I think that is the future. I know there are a number of companies that are trying to bring that together, build community and monetize those things for leads. But I do want to go back. I remember in, 2020, a little earlier, I was doing a lot of hiring, and there was all the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we could take and make amazing teams through different perspectives, bringing folks together. And what AI and what these screening tools are doing is really what we're hearing in the face of that, and all of the progress and all those pieces that had been made, to at places like Figma or others to really create amazing products and bring in those different perspectives. That this is the next wave, mostly I think because of cost cutting, where we've seen the pendulum swing back and trying to find people that are more like-minded and can get through whoever is writing those job descriptions to be able to join.
I think a lot of hiring managers that may have been using these tools need to either take a second look at them or somehow talk to the providers of this software and say, look, guys, you guys are rejecting people for stupid reasons. And then I don't know if they go back to another system or go back to is it just that so many people, but again, the unemployment rate is so low, it's not like we're at 10% unemployment and that people are banging down the doors to, find, they are trying to find work, but
here's another data point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, there's this whole macroeconomic issue of the gig economy, and people are making money in new ways.
Well, I think a lot of people today have multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why the unemployment rate's so low. I don't know.
And I know that some people that were on, for a while I was unemployed and, not collecting unemployment after I got laid off. I ran through my unemployment, didn't find a new job, and then I'm just off the system. So I'm not counted as someone who's unemployed anymore because I'm out of the system, even though I didn't have, I didn't have a full-time job. And then my life became kind of gig work and freelancing and contracting and things like that. So as far as I know, I might not, I don't know if I'm in the system or not. Like, the government, as far as the government's concerned, with the numbers that they track, there's a big hole of people out there that are just not being tracked by the system because that system is relying on a labor platform that no longer exists, right?
Yeah. And it's an underemployment, really, is what you're looking at. And it's a diversification that's good for some people, in the fractional role, the podcasting role, right? How you can bounce around and have that flexibility, but it's not without its, insecurity. I think that's the challenge, and folks have to be ready for that change in the workforce and their daily lives and that dynamic.
I can guarantee you that, okay, I'm going to knock on this table, but if I had to go back to the unemployment office anytime soon, and I tried to tell the people at the unemployment office, like, well, what do you do, Keith? And I'm going to be like, well, I'm a podcaster. They're going to be like, what the hell is that? Or what? They probably, there's no category in there. That list of categories of all types of Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's nothing that says podcaster. I mean, I guess would it count as media journalist? I tried to tell people that I was an editor before, like a couple of years ago when I was unemployed. They had no idea. Like, they're used to people like you're either a farm worker or a mechanic or a teacher. Like, they know certain roles, but as these new jobs come out, they just roll their eyes when you try to tell them what you do. I can only imagine what a CTO would have to go through at the unemployment office.
I don't know. I probably just put engineer and then roll my dice and hope that they didn't ask any more questions.
Yeah. All right, that's going to segue into my next topic, and it's a little bit of a leap, but Gallup this week announced that for the first time in the history of its World Happiness Report, I love this idea of the World Happiness Report. So I guess for the first time, the U.S. was not in the 20 happiest countries in the world. This year, it's now number 23, down from a 15th place finish last year. The report ranks countries by age group for the first time, showing that the U.S. decline is at least partially attributable to Americans under the age of 30 are feeling worse about their lives.
I mean, are any of us surprised by this? I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Listen, if you can't be happy in the U.S., like the rest of the world,
a rough couple of years. Let me say that it's been a rough couple of years, and I can understand.
Brandon, I don't want to ask you your age on the show, but are you over 30?
I am.
Okay, all right. Because I was going to make fun of people under 30, but yeah, I guess when is the happiest part of your life? You're usually happy about your life the younger you are, right?
Yeah, I think they say like in your 20s, that's your happiest. Once you hit your 30s, then that's gloom and doom. Midlife crisis, right? And then, as the older you get, like 50s and stuff, you get happier, like late 40s, 50s.
So yeah,
yeah, exactly.
With most midlife crises, people like guys like me, we go out and buy a sports car or something like that. Or my midlife crisis, the way I'm dealing with it is basically hosting this podcast and using it as my online therapy. All All right, so I want to keep going because there is a point to this. So the country of Finland retained its crown as the happiest country in the world for the 7th straight year. But for the people that are under 30, the happiest country in the world is Lithuania. And for those over 60, it's Denmark. So after I hit 60, I'm probably going to move to Denmark because apparently that's where people are happiest. I do have some colleagues and friends that are from Denmark, and I'm hoping they're watching this show, and they're super, super nice people. Everybody I've ever met from Denmark has always been happy and always been friendly. I'm serious. They're really nice people.
Yeah.
And apparently Denmark is being known for more and more robotics. There's a huge robotics industry in Denmark. So I was invited at one point to go to Denmark and visit these cities, and then COVID hit. So I was like, oh, that's so much for that idea. All right, hold on. There is a point to this. Basically, could frustration with the job market be one of these reasons? Obviously, general feelings about what's going on in the world, I think, help contribute to it. But I'm also wondering if technology that gives us the ability to have access to news all the time and Twitter all the time and social media all the time, I'm wondering if that's playing a part in why people, maybe even why younger people are unhappy.
I mean, I think in large part, and this is, I think, not related to tech, but I don't know, maybe economy base.
Could be, yeah. But economy,
in large part,
economy, politics, things like that. If whenever I converse with someone who's unhappy about news or the state of the world, the first thing I tell them to do is like, put down your phone, stop reading the news, go outside, and have, basically, experience the world without all of this information flooding you. Even if they're watching if they're listening to my podcast. So like Brandon, you were telling me that you listen to the podcast while you're running. Even if that's happening, just take a break, right?
I think that's right. And, if social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, like they're all empty calories for some of those connections I think that we're all looking to have. And with COVID, we couldn't connect and we only had those as options. We're still coming out of the COVID hangover and trying to figure out how to act and how to re-engage, and whether we go into an office and we have a coffee machine, or like there's still so many questions that I understand why the happiness index may be low, and it makes sense. I'm curious why it's so high in Lithuania. Like that seems great. But like, what have they figured out that we haven't? Because we're still learning and trying to adapt to what this new thing is, and maybe just take some time.
I'm a little embarrassed because I could probably not point out where Lithuania is on a map of Europe. I know it's in Europe, so I should
John
get some
Oliver
points for
would
that.
give me every time. I don't know.
It might be near Denmark. Yeah. In fact, I want to try to ask a couple of people that are under 30. I mean, is it just that it's a generational thing where they've been subjected to such an onslaught of different bad news that's what makes them feel bad. It could be the economy too. I mean, things are more expensive. There's inflation. Then you've got a whole other election cycle, and that's going to depress anybody, to be honest.
And housing. I mean, the price of housing, especially here in Boston, if you don't feel like you can make your rent or that you can buy a house and that dream is further and further out of reach.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
Yeah, I think the average interest rate on mortgage these days is like 6-7%, which is insane.
Yeah, I think the reason we're not selling our house is because I think we have a 3 to 4% rate on our home.
I mean, I got lucky with mine. I'm 2.7.
Nice.
2.7.
Nice.
Like we're not moving at all.
There's probably a 25-year-old that wants to buy y'all's home, right? Like they can't wait, and now they can't, and because you're staying put.
Well, I was going to be staying put for another 10 to 20 years anyway. I got to get the 3 of my kids through college, and then we'll talk about where we're going to move after that point. Yeah. So I want to see if we can get our podcast to try to get that rank back up to the top 20 for the U.S. Do we have any ideas of how we can make people happier? Other than just watching the show and supporting us, and because that would make me happier.
And going outside, I think that's a great
Go outside.
Great recommendation.
Yeah, it's spring. Although it did snow here the other day. I'd say maybe go outside. Maybe the time of the year that Gallup asks these questions could have something to do with it. Like if you're asking someone in the middle of winter if you're happy, if they're in, well, I guess they're asking people all around the world. So I guess maybe that's not a thing. So. And I know Chris has his own idea.
Also up there, right? Australia fell, and that would have been their summer. So yeah, that's good point.
All right, I want to move on to our next topic. This has got me scratching my head. Apparently, Apple is reportedly in active negotiations with Google to bring its Gemini generative AI technology to the iPhone. This is according to Bloomberg, and it's also considered using OpenAI's ChatGPT. CEO Tim Cook has already confirmed that Apple is spending a tremendous amount of time and effort on AI features and plans to release them to its customers later this year. That's code for probably a worldwide developer conference, WWDC. So I would expect some kind of announcement in June. The report suggests that AI features built into Apple's products could eventually be powered by a mix of first and third-party AI models. Apple's models could power on-device generative AI with iOS 18, which is releasing later this year, while cloud-based AI features like text and image generation could come via partnerships with the likes of Google. What's amazing about this story is that Google has been taking a lot of hits lately for its Gemini AI. I think most of the discussion in the AI industry right now is that Gemini and Google are way behind what OpenAI is doing. And so it surprises me that Apple would be in serious discussions with Google at this point. There were also a couple of stories that came out about the culture of Google is starting to kind of crumble based on some of the stuff that was going on with the Gemini AI and the image generation that had a lot of biases in it. But also just the team culture in general is not as happy-go-lucky as it used to be at Google. So, are you surprised that is this a good idea that Google and Apple would be going at it? And my other question would be, are you surprised that Apple is going this partnership / third-party route? Because we've had discussions on this show as well about when will Apple get in the game? Oh, well, when Apple knows that it can build this itself, then they'll be, again, like what Apple always does. It was like, we'll build it ourselves. So what are your thoughts, Brandon?
I guess this is a pretty classic, or I would look at it through like a build versus buy decision. And I don't imagine that Apple's sitting on their heels, and that when deals like this happen, it's probably whatever is already in place, whatever can move the fastest, gets more attention. If Apple already has deals with Google in place for search provider and Chrome provider on their devices, it's probably easier from a biz dev and a corporate governance to move forward with that, even if the technology isn't as advanced.
Yeah.
There are questions about it. So it's not a new paradigm. It's not a new behavior from Apple that they can partner where they are, and they probably are looking for whatever is easy. What I look to Apple for to use this AI, and where I think we're going to see amazing strides, is in the wearables and what your Apple Watch is going to be able to tell you and what they can compute down on those devices from the biometrics that they're pulling. I think that's their long game, and that's their core competency that we're going to be blown away from in 2 or 3 Apple events in a number of years.
Brandon, I didn't get a chance to ask you this. Are you an Apple guy or a PC guy, or like where do you stand in the world of Apple fanboyishness?
Well, I mean, I worked for Macworld or out here in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I'm on a Mac for all of my development. My phone's an Android. I have a Pixel Watch, and I use AirPods. So
you're all over the place.
I am, yes, not loyal, I guess is what I would say, and I want to use whatever I like and will fit my lifestyle and work best.
What I think what most people would think about when they talk about AI and Apple would be, all right, well, Siri is their conversational AI assistant. You would think that if they made a big splash about, well, Siri's now smarter, or Siri AI or something like that, or they just dump Siri altogether, and now you've got IAI, which is a horrible name. I'm hoping they don't even name it that. But adding generative AI components to an assistant, which again, I've heard Amazon is probably trying to do something. They were trying to do a platform where you would pay for it, which is insane to me, considering how much data they get from their regular Alexa program on because they're listening in on all of my conversations. That's cynicism, by the way, Brandon. Yeah, you would think that would be the focus of a system, and it probably won't be. It's probably going to be all of these little AI-ish features within the phone, similar to what Samsung did with the Android and Galaxy phone.
That would be my guess on that side. I think, it's also really interesting. One of my favorite features on the Android phone is the changes to the phone app and how it can use AI to wait for when you're on hold or go through prompts when you're trying to call Charter or Comcast to get through to your cable bill. And those are really interesting conversational advancements that I've noticed and I've seen, and I think it lays the groundwork for more of those advances. But you're right. I think Siri is a great place that, alongside the Apple Watch, that Apple would be looking to invest in. I guess
the story says that this was from the Bloomberg story that Apple employees have apparently been testing an in-house chatbot called Apple GPT, and that the company reportedly has its own large language model codenamed Ajax, but that the AI tech is said to be less advanced than the competition. Maybe they're feeling at this point is like, well, we got to get into with something. So let's. Yep. I would imagine though that if you're in negotiations with Google, it's like, have you? I'm hoping that some of these people at Apple have been like, have you tried this? It's just not as good. But again, I don't think because OpenAI is so heavily invested by Microsoft, I'm thinking that Apple's like, well, we can't give money to our competitor, who then might do something with it.
Another competitor, right? And Microsoft, or I guess that's the other piece.
Okay, all right. Moving from Apple, still within AI, but now we're going to move to Google and YouTube. Recently, this week, YouTube basically has new rules for realistic AI-generated videos. YouTube has now laid out its new rules for labeling videos made with artificial intelligence. The platform is now requiring anyone uploading a realistic-looking video that is made with altered or synthetic media, including generative AI, to label it for the sake of transparency. YouTube defines realistic content as anything that a viewer could easily mistake for an actual person, event, or place. If a creator uses a synthetic version of a real person's voice to narrate a video or replace someone's face with another person's, they need to include a label. So if it's me and then someone uses my voice to narrate something else, that would be a problem, I guess. Or if I was more famous than I am. They'll also need to use flattered. They'll also need to include the disclosure if they alter footage of a real event or place, such as modifying an existing cityscape or making it look like a real building is on fire. I think that they're just trying to prevent the potential of deep fakes during this election season and making sure that people. I didn't have you seen a lot of AI generated videos on YouTube that are getting kind of popular hits? I don't necessarily follow all of the trending stuff that's going on. I think even like that short film that you have right there, Chris, like,
I've seen like bot accounts on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook easily. Whether they were AI generated or not, I don't know, but I would imagine a lot of those accounts would be AI generated.
Now, one interesting part of this is that you don't have to use this if you have content that is clearly unrealistic or animated, such as someone riding a unicorn through a fantastical world. I guess kids animation things are exempt. So obviously, if you make it try to look like a Pixar movie type thing, people are going to know that it's animation, and then probably won't care whether or not it's AI generated or not. I think if you're just trying to trick people, that they're going to say that's not real. Is this just YouTube kind of covering themselves for potential lawsuits or government regulation? They're like, well, we asked the creator to do it, and they didn't.
I think they're doing the right thing just in general. I think there should be some sort of differentiation between, the content that's AI generated, and the content that's not, content that's original. I just think that's the right thing to do, you know, from like a moral level.
Yeah, but this is Google. This is YouTube. Remember,
I know you were talking about the election, right? And trying to avoid those. How much of this is still fallout from Taylor Swift and that deepfake, La Creuset ad, and bringing all the attention that we saw before the Super Bowl to to trying to combat that. Is this the next wave or the response more to that than looking ahead, I wonder?
I think they're trying to look ahead to see what potentially could happen.
Yeah.
But just because YouTube does it doesn't mean that you can get your deep fake out by just putting the stuff on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. And I don't know if these guys are going to follow suit. Again, do you have to? I think if I uploaded a video to Instagram, I don't have to. At this point, I don't have to say whether it's real or not. Yeah, I think that's more just from a coverage standpoint. The reason I thought I was being cynical about it was they also in the era of AI audio. This was before all the video stuff came out. There was some rules about, well, you can't use AI to generate a song that sounds like so-and-so. So you can't create an AI-generated Taylor Swift song. And that was because YouTube had a partnership with Universal Music Group, or who are these big music companies. They didn't want to lose those royalty potentials. And so then they said, well, you can't do this. And then at the same time, they built their own tool that allows you to create a song that sounds like this partner's, because the partner will get paid. So that it felt like that they weren't against necessarily the practice of creating AI. They just wanted people to use it through their tool so that people could get money. And that's the cynicism that
they hadn't figured out how to monetize it yet.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
So is there something coming down the road from YouTube? And again, I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of weeks they say, hey, everybody, here's a new free, easy to use and legal tool so that you can create, an animated video of you as a creator, but it's a unicorn talking, or it's a political, I don't know if they're getting into political figure stuff, but, or, maybe a celebrity. Maybe you could be like, oh, well, I could be talking, but then my face looks like Taylor Swift, which is a horrendous idea.
Or I could ask it to create a new My Little Pony,
I can tell you, I can guarantee you by the time, I guarantee you that YouTube will be announcing something like this at some point.
And then they will be talking about Gemini and how bad or good it is, right? Like it's the next thing.
Any other thoughts, Chris, or should we move on to the next one?
We can move on.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, now, Brandon, you're on the West Coast, so you're not getting excited. You don't have solar eclipse fever, do you?
I'm originally from St. Louis, so I, born and bred there. And I think when I saw a meme this morning, it said OMG over just a little bit of south of St. Louis and Cape Girardeau. So I was texting my parents about it. This is big news.
Are you going to go home? Are you going to go home and watch it?
I am not.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sure my mom will send me a million pictures.
So I was in a Home Depot the other day, and I saw that they were selling official, like the safety eclipse goggles, so that when you look at it, you don't burn out your retinas. And I was like, oh, I knew there was an eclipse that was coming. I didn't realize that in the Northeast, I think the city that I live in is in 85% coverage.
Oh, wow.
So and then I looked at the path, and it goes basically up to the corner of New York. So like Buffalo, Niagara Falls, I think even Syracuse is like 95%. And then it goes up to basically follows the St. Lawrence River up to Montreal and Quebec. So this is me drawing on an invisible map. And so that's going to get full coverage. So we're close enough. So on April 8th, I think it's like between 2 and 4, we'll be able to see this. And so it's a lot more excitement over here than maybe where you get it. But there was a story this week in Fast Company that said that this total solar eclipse could strain the electrical grid, which brings me back. We've discussed this on the show before as well, about how problematic it is with the electrical grid, especially as we talk about data centers, artificial intelligence, all of this new processing power that's needed for all of these things. And now it's funny because like now, it's not really a weather event. It's a space event.
Planetary?
Yeah. What's the word for it? So because they're blocking the sun, this story is like, oh yeah, because more and more of the world is using solar power. So if the sun is blocked, the power generation is going to go ooh, and now we're going to have a problem again with having to use other electric means such as coal-based systems and things like that. And the first thing I thought of is like, just when we have something that's cool, like a solar eclipse, there's always someone to remind us, well, it also might cause the end of the world or
Not so fast.
something
Not so
bad.
fast.
So I don't know. I guess the last time that they tracked this was in 2017 because there was another total solar eclipse in the world. So this was 7 years ago, and they did notice how much generation happened. The loss of renewable power generation in 2017 added up to nearly 6 gigawatts, the equivalent to the energy of 600 million LED light bulbs or 4.5 million homes. And so they don't think there's going to be any temporary blackouts or brownouts or things like that because of it. But, someone wrote a story about it and offered their opinion on what the power companies were doing. Any thoughts on this, or is this just me being goofy?
I enjoyed the article.
Yeah.
The part that I hadn't thought through is that with the temperature drop, that also impacts wind power because it's less windy. So this is all over a pretty significant event. And it's also pretty surprising that it's the second time in 7 years. I was surprised to hear that for something that is quite rare. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting.
I remember when I was in elementary school, and this is again, you guys can do the math, but there was going to be a solar eclipse, and they always tell you when the next one's going to be in your area or wherever in the U.S. that they usually say. Mm-hmm. And at one point they were like, and the next one won't be until 2001. I'm like, oh my gosh, we'll be in the future at that point. We'll be in flying cars. We'll be able to see everything. We'll be able to travel anywhere in the world. And I was like, okay. So as you get older, you realize so whenever they tell you when the next one is, it'd be like, well, the next one will be in 2035. I'm like, that's a fake number. What are you talking about? And then you realize that it's not when you hit that year. So if you are go ahead, Brandon.
No, the thing that it did at least make me question or think about it, there have been articles recently about sort of the growing different options to slow down climate change and global warming and some sort of a shield that we could deploy. I'm certainly far from an expert, but it makes me question, what are some other ramifications that, of course, a total blackout of 80 miles is having this kind of impact. If we're so reliant on solar as a generation, I don't know how those two are connected, but I wanted to look at it more.
Wasn't there? I don't know. Did you hear about someone wanting to build a giant sun blocker?
Yeah,
and that just reminded me of that Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns wanted to block out the sun.
Mr. Burns,
and that was the Who Shot Mr. Burns episode, the two-parter. And it was like, yeah, that was a bad idea in a cartoon. But then scientists are like, no, maybe we could do it to kind of lessen the amount of heat that comes to a planet. But then you're like, but the other side of the planet is still not being blocked. And also people rely on the sun for the solar energy. It's like, so, you're blocking it to try to bring the temperature down. But then anyway, is it just me? Have scientists just gone completely off the rails? Brandon, you weren't here for the episode. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the scientists that are trying to bring back the woolly mammoth. I don't know if you saw.
I saw an article.
We started talking about the whole. Did they not watch Jurassic Park? It feels like this week I got to go to the scientists. Did you not watch Who Shot Mr. Burns?
They're all just depressed and under 30, so no, they didn't.
That's right. All of the scientists that are bringing these fantastic new ideas are just sad and unhappy people under the age of 30. All right, now we're going to end on a good news story because this is really cool. Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's neuroscience startup, live streamed an interview with its first patient this week. The man in question, a 29-year-old quadriplegic who identifies himself as Nolan Arbaugh, said he has been unable to move his arms or legs for nearly a decade. Using Neuralink's brain implant, which was inserted in January, the man now seems to be able to play chess as well as the game Civilization by using his mind. The interview in which Nolan is seen playing the games was streamed to Musk's social media platform X. Basically, now you saw this, Brandon. Tell me what impressed you about all this.
It came across my inbox, and when I clicked on it, it just seemed like such a huge step forward and such a compelling change of life for that individual.
Yeah.
I have bumps right now as I was thinking about it. There are all kinds of questions that it brings up.
Yeah.
But the idea that you could use your mind to move a computer, to play chess, to send emails. There was a point where he turned down his Spotify with his mind so that the microphone would stop picking up the music that he was listening to. And like that feels like the future, good or bad. It just feels like a innovation, something that was really cool that has never existed before.
Yeah. And there's been human brain interface research before. Was there something about it that was more impressive than maybe other things that you had seen, or had you not seen kind of some of this other stuff that was going on before?
Seen anything, and I guess the application of him in his real life, you see his dogs running around, ideally there to help him out and, live his life. But this is putting him into a virtual world and the internet and life and connections that I can only imagine what that opens up as far as getting him over the, helping US folks be happier.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they're using this technology to help patients like this rather than trying to commercialize it so that you or I could use it just because we want to pretend to be Professor X from the X-Men, or we want to start moving things with our mind like we're Jedi. So at least I'm glad they're using this in a beneficial capacity. So that's what was really impressive to me. Like when I see robotics being used to help spinal patients walk, for example, that's a great use of technology that benefits everybody. Rather, like I don't need a flying car yet. So let's work on the things that actually are beneficial. I don't even know if it was the right chess move or not. I didn't stick around to watch that part, but impressive stuff. So I'm kind of glad that this came out. And again, it also shows you that not everything that Elon Musk is involved with is horrible and awful.
I would agree with that. And there was a point in there where the individual was saying like, thank you to the countless hours of the engineers, of the company, of the dedication. If you think about how much effort, time, testing, from the QMS, the certification with the with all of the different legal bodies to get to this first patient, all of the effort, the time, the money, the brain power, the late nights, to hear that acknowledged and see it actually making a difference in somebody's life, the engineer in me gets really excited about that. And that was a big, dopamine hit for me that I felt really great seeing that.
That's cool. Chris, any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I think it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, how this could affect, amputees or people, who are missing a limb, like to be able to connect Neuralink to maybe, mechanical prosthetic or something like that'd be cool.
Right.
Like that would be really helpful, right? I mean, we talk about tech being useful. How can tech be useful? That right there is a perfect example.
I think on the prosthetic arm, if from what I remember, if you were missing a limb and then they gave you another arm, you can use, I think, the muscles in the arm to do things like grab a cup of coffee or things like that.
But I wonder if like it could further refine it, you know what I mean? Like it could be an additional.
So instead of just one
something.
action or a couple of actions, you can now actually use it like a
maybe.
Hand.
I don't know.
I know this stuff is like way over my head, and so that's why some of this stuff is really impressive when you see it.
Right.
So
and there was one point in the video where he was talking about they had to figure out the difference between like meaningful wanting to move something versus a phantom or the idea of moving your arm. That somehow it can tell it's figured that out, which also seemed really important, but sort of an undercurrent of the overall, launch.
Yeah.
I think I have to read more stories about Neuralink. I'm just again, it's so over my head that I need to get a better explanation about that kind of stuff.
We got to get Elon on the show and just have him talk about it.
There you go. There you go.
I mean,
Elon Musk, the invite's always open. Come on into the show. Talk to us. We won't make fun of you. Or will we? I don't know. We'll have to get Brandon on the show too. If you had to ask him something, what would you ask him, Brandon?
Last night I watched the Don Lemon interview just by happenstance. And I thought it was so compelling with the different companies that he holds, how he balances it all, and the way he sees the world in a very sort of Maybe we should just ask him if we can host our show on X.
Yeah.
There you go. Post it on X.
We only need a couple million to produce the show, right? That's all.
Actually, yeah. I don't know why we're not.
Yeah, it just
Why
hit
haven't
me.
I thought about that?
Just hit me.
Like, we can
All
put
right.
this on X.
All right, Brandon, great job. Thanks again for joining us as guest co-host this week. We will see you next week. Again, thanks for being part of Today in Tech.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you all.
that's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.